The first thing a lot of people would know or knew us from previous worlds was that business as we knew it in the consulting game, business consulting game, sales training game, we were, you and I, fine. Like our businesses were fine. There was no major challenge we actually had to solve as far as our own businesses running them. You know, like I was making enough money, you were making plenty of money. So life was good, life was fine. Like it didn't really require anything different. But down the bottom of my guts, I always knew, nah, there's a deeper game to be played here. When it comes to learning, when it comes to education, there was always like, this content stuff is only just scratching the surface. This is just giving people the taste test of what they actually need to go on, the journey they really need to go on to actually learn.
Do you remember the call? You had a different tone in your voice. Do you remember what you said to me?
Yeah, I think I said something like, dude, I reckon that people actually aren't getting as much out of this as number one, they think they are, and number two, we hope they are. Because this was the problem, man. Like people would tell, you couldn't tell the difference. It was all smoke and mirrors from the people that we would train as well, because they thought they were getting a lot out of it. They thought, they were like, yeah, no, this was great. This training was awesome. This gave me exactly what I need. But it's not until you actually just pull back. I'm talking just one layer of the onion, man. And you very quickly find that sales numbers, the true results that actually mattered, weren't receiving the upspike that their emotions were. So that phone call was, dude, I reckon we've got to be honest with ourselves and honest with the market here and go, there's got to be a better way to do this.
Look at your shirt, Matt. Look at your shirt. Through Bravo, Darcy and mine's company, we've created a brand new event. We've found a way to actually train salespeople in a completely revolutionary way using game theory.
Remember the first thing I brought up with you was a previous training that I had attended some 3 years earlier. And after attending it, my own personal sales numbers in business doubled within a week after attending through the concepts that I learned at this particular event. And so I said to you but the cool thing about it, Steve, was that every part of it was delivered through the use of games. And with the concept or the idea behind the way we play games is the way we play life.
Yeah.
And so if we can, and we just sort of threw it out. Remember, we were just like, well, let's just give this games thing a go. Let's explore that.
It resonated with me for one particular reason, like, you know, dad, 2 young girls, Alyssa's 7, Nora's 5. And just seeing them go to school in a play-based learning environment, I was like, man, they are not only consuming so much information, but they are getting to put it to work. They're getting to explore.
Rapidly learning.
Yeah, and like you go away for a week and you're like, whoa, where'd Nora come from? Like the amount of learning that can happen in such a short amount of time.
Yes.
I was like, okay, maybe there's something.
All through getting their hands dirty, all through playing, all through actually involving themselves in like simulated learning environments. That's what kindergarten is. That's what the
moving blocks, actually getting amongst it.
Absolutely, right?
We just picked a date, hey. We just
picked a date.
2-day event.
Yeah.
2-day event, Melbourne. It's called the Consultative Sales Game.
Yeah. We're going to teach you all through the use of games. And the people that came were high quality people. Some people even watching this right now will remember they were in that first ever consultative sales game room. And it was a high quality event for 2 days. These people played games that they had no idea how it was going to end.
We had never tested before.
They had no idea what the learning was they were going to get out of it. We didn't necessarily know that the learning that they were going to get out of it was what they were going to get. But we just knew in our heart of hearts that if we put people in simulated learning environments, they'll learn 10, 20 times more.
More than we can ever tell them.
Than we could ever give them through content.
I've never smiled so much in my life. This is the coolest game ever.
The biggest thing I reckon that was a game changer when we're going through all the different games. We're trying to work out the rules, we're trying to work out what does the game look like, is there an umpire, all this sort of stuff. Was when we landed on the 4 principles.
Yes.
I think that completely changed the way that we thought about games.
Well, essentially, we swapped out what is a game or a good match made out of, i.e. the umpires, the two teams, white lines, or we swapped out all that concept for how do you play a good game? Because if you know how you play a good game in life and how you play a good game in business, if we can like nail that down to what we did, 4 principles, and give that to people.
It's been a massive glue for us.
Totally, and that's ultimately the concept or the context through which all of their growth has happened, is these 4 principles.
Okay, so if you've understood yourself, you've backed yourself, you've understood others, and then what do you think 4 is? Once you understand others, then you know how to back them. But it's totally normal to get stuck at 1, 2, 3, or even get stuck at 4. What if you spend all your time backing others and you forget to back yourself, right? All of these, you're going to be looking at these going, I do that one really well, and that number 3 or 4 I am at, right? It's just not my strength, which again, it's all good. All we're here to achieve is the self-awareness of what needs to shift, okay? Because upon having self-awareness around what needs to shift, what do you think will start to happen? You've got no choice but to change.
So nailing it down to those 4 principles was really ultimately where the sales game started to take shape, because we realized out of all the games that we played, there was one particular game that
The mighty
the chips game, the chips game, which is now what has become the sales game, was this one game that we played
For an hour.
For an hour. It went for 1 hour. And essentially all we did was,
All right, so you might notice you've got some
Go for it.
chips on your table. Has everyone got a stack of
Has
chips?
everyone got their own stack of chips?
and we said, here's 20 chips. You've got, actually we didn't tell them how long there was going to be played. You've got a certain amount of time.
That you'll never know about.
That's it.
The winner is going to be the one with the most chips at the end of this predetermined time. The loser will be the person with the least amount of chips.
The winner at the end of this game will be the one with the most chips, and they'll receive like a book or something like that. The loser will be the one with the least. How you go about that is completely up to you.
No rules.
Go ahead, start.
Go.
I remember that mate, go. And then the room just kind of looked around like, what do we do
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
But then for the next 60 minutes, unbelievable insights and awareness. And when you're talking about those 4 principles of awareness of self, awareness of others, backing of self, backing of others,
Yeah.
it was amazing. It just
Yeah.
blew up.
It did. The first thing to take note of, the thing that was most entertaining to watch, and probably for the players, the most entertaining to experience for themselves, was what their first move was going to be. People like had these chips, similar to how some people just like have this money in life, and they're like, what do I actually do with this? How do I use this? Number 1, to generate more, but number 2, to generate value for others. Like, what do I do with this? And that's a question that until some people are put in that position to realize for themselves, a lot of people don't necessarily know what to do or how to be strategic with the chips they've got in their hand, i.e. the money they've got, i.e. the network they have, i.e. the education that they have,
Influence,
the
yeah.
influence that they have. What do I do with this? How do I best use this? And the chips game brought all of that to the surface within 7 seconds.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to watch. Fascinating to watch. What was your favorite part about that chips game? What did you enjoy taking away from it as an observer?
For me, it was the observation of the players getting light bulbs.
Yeah.
Where they were like, oh my goodness, now I understand that when I have a big pile of chips, i.e. sales are good,
Yeah.
I get uncomfortable about that, and now I just want to get rid of them. It's almost like the light bulb after light bulb after light bulb of people realizing like, I've been doing this for years, like
Yeah.
sometimes decades, and I had no awareness that that was the trigger for me or that was linked.
Yep.
Just seeing that drop for people, I was
Yes.
like, this thing is powerful, man.
So to be able to sit back and watch that was,
Particularly from a psychological
oh
point of view.
man, if I may be selfish about it for a second, I was in heaven just watching this. I was just like, this is psychology 101 unfolding before our eyes
In real time.
in a 10-year span, being zeroed back down to a 60-minute,
6 years of life in 60
example.
minutes. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was exactly it. So man, after that,
We knew we had something.
we knew we had something. So once we realized that we had something, like something was unique about it, We didn't really know what was unique about it yet, but we knew something had clicked.
And the feedback was there.
Feedback
even
was
from
massive,
even from the first game.
The
Consultative sales game, people saying,
This is groundbreaking.
It's blown my mind.
Completely blown my mind.
How you play games is how you play life. It came out in so many people in so many ways.
but I think we both knew deep down that there was a lot more work to do on the game itself.
We realized that the most effective games, let's just even actually solidify it, isolate it to the most effective game, the one, was the chips game. And the reason it was so powerful was because, speaking psychologically, it was so raw and so close to the human condition and how people most act just naturally if they just had a raw environment to just be,
People were themselves.
be literally human being. Does that make sense? So that was what brought it to life. And then we realized, well, anything that we do moving forward with this, if we're going to take this one thing as the most important thing, this one game as the ideal game, then anything that we create for it needs to be representative of real life and the way it already works and simulates the environment that people play in the business world every day.
Yeah, it is weird. It is weird how much I love this game. I find it interesting, just the different strategies that people play immediately.
We had a busker.
We had push-up
competitions.
When someone just jumped in and tried to steal.
Starting to form
Little
factions
alliances.
slightly.
This is really the fun part for me personally, because I think, you kind of grab the vision of there's something about this psychologically that we learn so much more through play than just pure consumption of information.
Yep.
But when it got to actually refining the game, that's where I felt like the inner kid came out in me. Because I grew up playing board games. And so the concept of mechanics and unlocks was like, oh, this is really cool. But I think that's the secret sauce, is anytime we worked on an unlock or a refinement to the game, we always asked that question, how does this represent life?
Yes.
And so I think the first one we did was tax.
Tip? Do you want a tip? Yes. Just ensure that you put away a little bit of money for tax.
Second unlock that we had, which I was fascinated by, was the casino. Oh, so we just need to talk about the previous wins that gamblers have had. Don't talk about the losses. Just remind them that only wins happen at the casino.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, yes!
You can't be gloaty about it.
Unlucky, ladies.
I'm so sorry.
It was just amazing to see. For me, that was a real eye-opener from the unlocks.
Yes.
Seeing how people could take a very open world, open source world, no rules still.
Yes.
But by adding a few little flavors throughout the game that simulates life.
Yep.
How people were either drawn to that based on human behavior and how they do this in the real world, but two, how it gave people opportunity for creativity. And I think in the modern business world, that's when I personally got super excited, because it almost became beyond just sales training then. It became almost an environment of how flexible are you? How adaptable are you? How creative are you? If you've got a few raw ingredients, what sort of meals can you make out of it?
Nice.
I love that. I loved watching that, because I'm a creative guy. I love creative ventures. That's the thing that gives me probably the biggest buzz out of anything. To see the game actually facilitate creativity within people, I was like, this is sick.
Yep, totally. And then the next one was, so we had tax, casino, bank. So people could do
Bank things. Fat cat banks.
Yeah, the fat cat bank.
Bank. Who wants money?
We are the bank.
Huh.
Hey.
We've got to run a tighter operation here, Das. We just left the bank vault open in the public.
A crap bank.
10 seconds to make the decision. If not, we will offer it to the next person.
And they will
You guys are good, eh? Such bankers.
They will most likely take it too.
Yeah, and then from there, of course, the idea that brought so many of the ideas that people come up with in the game, brought them to life, which was the Shark Tank.
Shark Tank was a game changer.
The first time we did the Shark Tank, that was all about, give us an idea that you want to work with in the room here, or an idea that exists in your business in the real world. And if we think it's good, we'll back it with more chips. But the beauty of it was, in order for us to back people as the Shark Tank, we needed them to back themselves first. So actual action was happening right there in the room. It was fun for everyone because it was all part of a game. They got instant feedback from us as their mentors right there, instant feedback from the room as well on people thinking about their ideas. So those unlocks that critically and exactingly, I hope that's a word, represent real world, real life. Those concepts that were brought into it, you know, it sort of let us know, I think, ultimately that we had something. This has legs, and it is very different to the typical sales and business training out there.
Worked. That's the thing. I think when we did that second event, and it had some of these unlocks, and we're pretty much playing the chips game, which is now the sales game, for the whole time. It took that first event where people were getting those light bulbs to people literally saying, "This blew my mind."
I've changed. My whole paradigm has changed in the last 48 hours.
It's been the most amazing 2 days I think I've almost ever spent.
And wow, has it been way more in-depth than what I would have ever imagined.
I've come away now not only knowing more about myself, but stuff that I can implement in my business basically from tomorrow.
Not only was it a light bulb, but like the whole thing exploded and people could not go back to who they were before. And that's when, you know, we were getting emails and messages and phone calls of people months later. Like we still get it today, months after they've played, still reflecting on the game.
Yeah.
And seeing the fruits of the ideas that they came up with in the game.
Yeah, and that was, humbly speaking, that was like we were there with them. We weren't like, yeah, I know, our thing's pretty good, isn't it? We were like, I know, it's really good, isn't it? Like this game that just brings it to the surface. We were on the journey with them.
But the thing that was really interesting, because I remember we had to kind of help each other in this, because we're so used to always delivering and helping, was the idea of letting it go as facilitators.
Yeah, let the game run.
Let the game run. And that completely changed my paradigm around education.
Yeah.
That by creating an environment for people to learn through, people learn way more in that than they ever could with just information alone. But when the two came together, I remember we were delivering some trainings in between the rounds where people might be struggling with, say, logic or emotion or whatever approach they were working on. When you then gave the content to be like, hey, here's a model to think through, or here's a model to work through.
In the next round, implement this model.
They could immediately grab it, hold it, work with it, and then that's when the learnings were getting cemented.
Yeah.
That's when people were like, oh, I changed that one thing and the whole game changed for me that round.
Yeah.
That was super cool to see.
From there, I think one of the coolest parts was a guy, shout out to Dale Dupree, over in Orlando, America. That he heard about it, contacted me on LinkedIn, and he said, I think it's time that we bring you boys over to America to, you know, show my community this.
Das, what day is it?
Today's sales game in Orlando. We were having a ball. We were like, wow, we're headed to Orlando to play the sales game.
I don't know about you, dude. I'm pretty pumped. Have a good day.
And again, this same thing happened when we were in America. People heard about the sales game that these Aussies guys do.
The sales game's legit. It was freaking epic, dude.
Sales game was awesome.
It was one of the best things that I've ever experienced in my entire life when it comes to sales training, hands down.
And it's just like the word of the game just filtered everywhere rapidly. Might have helped that we had some Aussie accents in amongst, some gross Aussie accents in amongst the Americans, but I don't think that was it. Honestly, I think the sales game and the concept of it so rapidly caught people's attention, and so rapidly people were intrigued and curious. And I remember we had the conversation. I said, Steve, people want this, it's going crazy, but we can't fly to America every 20 days. Number one, that's probably illegal. Number two, you need like visas and stuff for that. And number three, we just couldn't do it energetically wise. We'd be burned out after 6 months, you know, and what a shame. This phenomenal product that's been created through us, and now we're not even going to be healthy enough to train it because we'll be doing stopovers in Singapore every 2 weeks, you know?
It's not possible. I remember saying that to you. I was like, this is great. This is blowing up.
Yeah.
I don't think we can run this any other way but travel.
Yes.
I remember that conversation.
It was a moment of like, oh, well, okay, we'll just keep going then. Like,
We'll just keep doing what we're doing.
Figure it out. Because we were on a high with it. Like, we're like, yeah, it'll be good. And then, of course,
China has identified the cause of the mysterious pneumonia outbreak in Wuhan city, and it's from the same family that caused the deadly SARS epidemic 17 years ago. It's a new type of coronavirus.
I remember first feeling the effects of it was we had the sales game and we were about to run it in New Zealand, in the South Island of New Zealand.
Second time in New Zealand.
We were second time we were going to fly to New Zealand to run it. And then I remember I was out for dinner at a 30th birthday party, good friend of mine, good mentor of mine. And I got the message from you saying, dude, we're not leaving tomorrow morning. The airports are shut.
Game over.
No, they're not letting anyone through in any borders. We're not going.
And Chicago got cancelled.
Yes, that didn't go ahead. So then Boston that we were meant to run, that won't go ahead. We won't be going back to Orlando to run it for any reason. Like, all of that got cancelled.
All the plans.
And as we speak right now, is still cancelled. People don't know when that will be happening again. And COVID for us, initially, it took to what seemed to us like some of the grandest plans we'd ever had.
So much momentum.
So much momentum, and just put one big red line through all of it, unapologetically. You know, it's not like COVID said, but it's okay because we can guarantee. It's like COVID just like, nah.
Not happening.
Just not happening. Don't know when you can, don't care if you can, just nah. And at that moment, we had two choices to make. The first was to go, oh, well, looks like COVID, they're thinking it'll be all back to normal within like 6 or 7 months. Let's just take it easy, wait it out, do what we can. Or the second option that we had was to look at each other and go, well, we said this couldn't be run virtually, but what if we asked a different question? What if we posed the question to ourselves? What if we had to make this work virtually? What would we do?
I had the pleasure of convening with these lads, which was basically, hey, there's this really crazy thing happening. Let's all jump on a call and brainstorm. And I can't remember which one of you said it, but someone said, no, we can't take the sales game virtual. And then the other person goes, wait, why not?
Yeah, that's what I said.
And then we were like, yeah, actually, why not? And then within 30 seconds, Steve's like,
we had the idea for it.
Yeah, and it was on like Donkey Kong.
And then from there, the sales game virtual was created. The current edition of it that used to be an in-person event mainly, but overall now the virtual edition of this is
so much better.
Jaw-droppingly. It's almost like we went from content to the sales game and we're like, whoa, look at the difference. And now we've gone sales game offline to sales game virtual, and it's like the virtual one is something, I'm gonna say jaw-droppingly powerful for sure. That's just a sales guy selling it though. The more vulnerable part of me wants to look at it and go, that is the most proud I am personally of anything we've ever created, of the work that we had to put in during COVID to create the sales game virtual.
So, like classic Stephen Darcy fashion, we put on an event, Sales Game Virtual Edition, before we had
is a thing now.
Built it.
Hey, give us a big wave, everyone. How good is this?
Funnily, when we reflect on that, that's happened all the events. We start with an idea, then we back ourselves, we put on an event, we get people into it, then we create. But we ran the first ever Sales Game Virtual with an Excel dashboard and Zoom. And we had 24 players from 4 different countries and 5 or 6 different time zones.
It was a Canadian and an American.
Yeah, played all night.
Played all through the night.
Because they really wanted to get their hands on the game.
And it was that experience that let us know, well, okay, the Excel dashboard worked, but it required us to run it manually. And then we got in touch with Frank Fava, who played the game, the virtual edition, loved it, he had a ball. And he's a website developer and app developer. He's working over in Sweden now, but we said, Frank, could you help us build an app out of this?
Get this, you haven't heard this story.
Okay.
During the Shark Tank, Frank pitched me the idea of, I think we could build
an app
for this. So he came up with the app within the sales game.
It's a bit meta, isn't it?
Pitched through the Shark Tank for me to give him chips. It was great. It was really, really interesting. But that was a complete game changer.
Yes, the app that's been created is essentially now the platform through which the whole game is played. And as we're shooting this right now, that brings us up to today. That brings us up to where the sales game currently is. It's a fully created virtual experience. That includes each of the 4 principles. It includes all of the unlocks, and it's all all the learning is still the same. It's all experiential. In fact, it's more relevant to the modern world we live in now, because if you can't sell virtually, you can't sell at all anymore.
Yeah.
Well,
most of your sales conversations are going to have a virtual aspect.
And so, yeah, the sales game virtual and what it's become, and the app that it's played through and the platform that it exists on now, compared to where we were when we said, man, we're running good businesses, everything's fine, but something needs to change. If you could compare those 2 worlds now to where it's sitting, it's just been an extraordinary journey. Not just for us, but for everyone who's played it and everyone who's experienced it, and those who are watching this that have experienced it, they know what we're talking about. Like it's something to behold. But I feel like we're just at the start, really. The future of it is super bright, is not going to be without its challenges from a business perspective, challenges from a tech perspective. You know, I think we're both learning a lot about that world.
It's been a lot of fun.
But overall, man, if the minimum standard is the experience people had back when it was just an Excel spreadsheet, compared to now, the challenges that we face moving ahead are probably going to be pretty high quality challenges. So yeah, I'm pumped, man. I'm pumped for the people, for the future players, for those who haven't played it yet. They're going to get their opportunity, which is awesome. Again, something I'm sure we're both humbled by, for the opportunity to actually play our part in creating.
Being online, it certainly didn't take away from the experience, and in some ways it even added to the experience.
It's almost, I think it's pretty much impossible to not get a learning in this room, in this experience.
It is something you will not find anywhere else, and it completely blew my mind.
So go do it, you won't regret it.
Nah, I get it. I get it, bro. I get it. This has been one of the most transformational days of my life, and if not the most.
Thank you!